We have our second keynote speaker, artist leader, Bridget Bartolini. Project. This is like a really awesome organization. You see her all over social media, all over the city. I was part of her LIC, Astoria Love Letters. She is just killing it all over the place. Really, you're like a legend in your own time. Very quiet stuff in there. Both, as I choose, really powerful women leaders. Audrey Lucia was one of our women's last year speaking with us. Hopefully we get her up to sing next year as an artist. It's very interesting to see people building on their different genres and talents and passions. We're women, we're creators, and we co-create with the men who love us and support us. And men are also amazing creators. This is Women's History Month. Okay, Bridget Bartolini is a socially engaged artist and educator who uses story sharing to strengthen community connections. Inspired by her love of New York City, her belief in the power of storytelling as a tool for social justice, and her frustration with the lack of cultural programming in areas like her home neighborhood in South Richmond Hill.
Woo!
They need help. I'm glad you're there. Absolutely. Awesome. Bridget launched the Five Boro Story Project 2013. Under the Five Boro Story Project, she produced community storytelling events that bring New Yorkers together. Her creative process involves working with community members, organizers, activists, and artists to collaboratively create tributes to people and places that make up our homes. Bridget holds a master's in community education from Columbia University's Teachers College and was a 2013 Create Change Fellow and a 2014 commissioned artist with the Laundromat Project. And a 2015-2016 Creative Community Fellow with National Art Strategies. And as an artist in residence with More Arts Engaging Artists, 2016 Housing Justice Residency. Very cool, Bridget. And her website is www.fiveborostoryproject.org. So let's bring in Bridget Bartolini.
So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Joan, for inviting me to be part of this. So my name is Bridget Bartolini, and I have an uncommonly strong love for Queens. And I bet there's a lot of Queens love in here tonight. How many people here live in Queens? Wow, okay. How many people here grew up in Queens? Awesome, but well represented. So I was born and raised in Queens, into a family that is exceptionally good at keeping it local. So both my mom and my dad were both born in South Richmond Hill. Yeah. We both grew up on 117th Street, a couple of avenues apart from each other. And they went to different schools, but they hung out in the same schoolyards as neighborhood kids do. And they were high school sweethearts who got married, and they had 3 kids. So my sisters and I grew up in the same house that my grandparents had lived in. And so to understand my story, you need to know a couple of things about South Richmond Hill. So I know some people here know but how many people know where it is? Okay, so it's in between Jamaica and JFK Airport. Where I live, it's the last stop on the A train to Lefferts. So the A train comes through Brooklyn and then up into Queens, and it splits, and one goes to JFK Airport and the Rockaways, and the other one goes up a little bit to Lefferts Boulevard. So I grew up there at the end of the A train to Lefferts Boulevard. So last stop on the periphery of New York City. And Richmond Hill is a pretty typical outer borough neighborhood in that it's a working class neighborhood. There's lots of immigrants. It's very culturally rich, but yet deprived of public resources. And my neighbors came from different countries all over the world, from Colombia to Bangladesh to the Philippines, but mostly Indo-Caribbean. Richmond Hill, South Richmond Hill is known as Little Guyana. And so it was a really wonderful place to grow up, and I lived right around the corner from Liberty Avenue, which is the main street in the area where the A train runs along there. It's elevated up in that part. And so I used to like play under the A train, and like Liberty Avenue was just my playground, and like we would go in all the stores. I knew every store on Liberty Avenue. So of course as a kid, there was like, what attracted me the most would be a pet shop that used to be there, a candy store. But there were also like right on the corner, there was the store, this is 1980, so they sold cassette tapes with like reggae, soca, calypso, chutney, and Bollywood music. There was, of course, the stores where you could rent your movies on VHS tapes, and like the Bollywood store that always had posters of Shah Rukh Khan in the window. He was like the biggest, he was the biggest Indian actor. And yeah, it was just like, you know, there's all fruit and vegetable stores, there's all like the produce out there, and like shops selling saris and jewelry. So it was like this beautiful, like colorful, really noisy place. And I loved it. And especially since my family had such deep roots there, I grew up feeling very, very connected to it. But yet somehow, despite all that, there was like this pervasive kind of message that I should be yearning to leave. There was this message that like making it means getting out. And so especially like I was this smart, dorky kid who was identified as like having potential, and I was going to be a princess, and I was going to make it out. So I followed that path without even really thinking about it. I went to Stuyvesant High School, which is a magnet school in Manhattan that attracts kids from like all corners of New York City. So, sorry, I'm congested. So for high school, I started doing that daily commute, taking the A train from Lefferts to Chambers Street, and I made friends from all different parts of the city. My best friends were from Parkchester and Flushing, and I even made friends from Staten Island. I then like had the opportunity to go and visit all these different parts of the city that I had like not known anything about before, and it was very eye-opening. And I especially saw like how there's such inequity in New York City, how some neighborhoods have so much and some neighborhoods have so little. And after high school, I went to college in Ohio, and that was culture shock. It was a good experience, but yeah, it was very, very different from Queens. In Ohio, it was like not diverse, nothing at all like Richmond Hill or New York City. And then I studied Japanese, and I got my first job in Japan. So I was working in Tokyo, which is the most diverse place in Japan, yet still not diverse at all. It's like even more homogenous than Ohio. And so like living in these two places really opened my eyes and helped me appreciate things about Queens and New York City that I had just taken for granted before. And I don't know if I would love Queens in the way that I do now if I had never left. But I always knew, like, even though I lived in Tokyo for 3 years and it became my home, I knew that I wanted to go back to where my family and where my best friends and my oldest friends were. So after 3 years, I decided to break up with my boyfriend and quit my job. So I went from like a young working professional woman to a single, broke, unemployed woman living at home with my mom. And I felt very, very happy. I was back in New York City, and I was back in South Richmond Hill, and it felt so good. Like the whole time I was in Ohio and Japan, I would like come back and visit as much as I could, and every time I would like leave my house and like step out and turn onto Liberty Avenue and like breathe in that Liberty Avenue air. And when I came back from Japan, it was like the end of the summer, and everyone knows summer is the best time in New York City. And like I remember one of the first weekends weekends, my sister took me to the Brooklyn Museum's first Saturday event. And I was like, whoa, it's a party in a museum, like this is crazy. And I was doing, like, just every day there were like so many fun, culturally enriching activities to choose from. Like, you know, a concert in the park, or a film in the park, or a lecture at a library. And there were all these public programs that, even though I was unemployed, I could go to them because they were free. And there was not like this richness of public programs when I was growing up. And I feel like in so many ways, New York City is becoming a more and more difficult place for people who are not wealthy to live. And so I was really excited by these public programs because I was like, this is one of the few ways that, in a small way, that quality of life is improving for New Yorkers who don't have disposable income. And so I was really excited and I wanted to be part of that. But of course, participating in these public programs meant enduring long train rides to Manhattan and Brooklyn. And I really felt like I wanted to do public programming in neighborhoods like Richmond Hill. And I wanted to do things that like connected New Yorkers to our history, to like our local history, and that gave us more opportunities to have positive interactions with our neighbors, because we definitely don't have enough opportunities for that in our daily lives. And yeah, I had all these ideas, but I didn't know what to do. So I decided to go back to school. And I got my master's in community education, and I was very inspired by my advisor, who had done work, research in storytelling. So my advisor, Hope Leichter, had studied about the way that we learn from stories, how we pass on stories and pass on lessons through the stories, how we all humans think in terms of stories, and also the way that the act of sharing our personal stories has this incredible power to build connections between people and to help us move past simplistic conceptions of other people and places and develop more complex and nuanced and truthful understandings of others. So I was like, yes, I know that storytelling is a tool that I want to use. And I was interning at the Bronx Museum when I was in school, and they gave me a great opportunity to start a new public program. Wow. And so I was able to put my ideas into practice, and I started a program called Bronx Stories, where people told stories about the Bronx, and also shared like music and poems and other art that was inspired by the Bronx and by artwork in the museum. So the feedback that I got from that event, the series, let me know that I was doing something right. So people said things like, tonight proves that the Bronx isn't all bad. And this shows me that we're not this backwards place people like to think we are. And things like that really struck me because they articulated this feeling that I know very well, and that I think a lot of people who grow up in the outer boroughs know very well. This sense that the outer boroughs are in some way less than, or not really part of this idea of what New York City is supposed to be. And I wonder if people here have had this experience that I've had when you meet someone for the first time and they ask you where you're from, and tell them New York City, they're like, oh, really, what part of New York? And I say, Queens. And they're like, oh, so you're not really a New Yorker. I'm like, yes, I am. The people of Queens are the greatest part of New York City. But yeah, I mentioned how South Richmond Hill is really culturally rich, but it's not the kind of culture that gets celebrated. Like the only times South Richmond Hill appears like in the media, it's reports about crime. Or occasionally like a New York Times reporter will venture out and discover the guy who's on the A train and like bring about the roti shops and the people who look Indian but sound Jamaican. Of course, 90s accents don't sound like Jamaican accents, but like, you know, they write things like this. So yeah, I just felt like, why shouldn't the culture in neighborhoods like South Richmond Hill be celebrated? And when it is, why is it done in a way that's like exotifying it? And why aren't the stories of these neighborhoods being told by the people who know it best, by the people who live in them? And why can't we like define these neighborhoods in our own words and on our own terms? And there's also wondering, what if instead of focusing on getting out, people in neighborhoods like South Richmond Hill have more opportunities to appreciate what we have and to build on what we have. So I was thinking about all these things, and that led me to create the Five Boro Story Project. So I launched it in 2013, and it's a program that produces free community storytelling events that bring New Yorkers together through sharing true stories and art inspired by our neighborhoods. And we travel throughout the 5 boroughs, doing these community events that they all look really different because each one is like really tailored to the neighborhood where it takes place. And each event is produced like with a lot of collaborators who are from the neighborhood, like people and grassroots organizations, and they happen in places as different as like parks and museums, bars, on street corners, but they all have 4 things in common. So 1, they are all free and open to the public. 2, they all have curated performances by people who have true life stories about their neighborhood, but also like poems and songs and like other art inspired by the neighborhood. 3, they all, in addition to those performances, have participatory elements. So it might be a story circle or an open mic or a discussion forum or a writing activity, but some kind of outlet for everyone in the who participates to like express themselves, to share their own memories and stories and concerns. And the 4th thing they all have in common is that they're organized with a cultural organizing framework. So I learned about cultural organizing through the Laundromat Project. Do you guys know about the Laundromat Project?
Yeah.
Sorry. For those who don't know, just gonna grab some water. The Laundromat Project is this really awesome nonprofit arts organization. And basically it was started by a woman who recognized how most people don't have leisure time to like go to arts institutions, and so they started doing like art workshops in places like laundromats. And so I was like, wow, I found out about it when I was like just graduating, and I applied for a job there, and I had an interview, and I did not get the job. But when they called me to tell me that I didn't get it, they also said, you should apply for our fellowship. And I was like, that's a fellowship for artists. And they're like, yeah, you should apply. So now remember, my background is in community education. I did not think of myself as an artist. That was because I had a very narrow idea of what an artist is. I thought artists are people who paint pictures, sculpt sculptures, take photographs, and I didn't know about socially engaged art. But I'm really glad that I applied for that Laundromat Project Fellowship, because then I learned about this world, and I found out that this thing that I had created, the Five Boro Story Project, that I was just doing intuitively because I felt like this was right and this felt needed, that there was actually a term for it, socially engaged art. And I was like, oh my God, like, it felt so good and affirming, and I learned about like socially engaged art principles and cultural organizing strategies that helped me give it structure, and basically like values like promoting neighborliness, about working really closely with communities and listening deeply to each other, building relationships and trust over time, being collaborative, doing work that's propelled by love. These are all socially engaged art principles. So yeah, when I started the Five Boro Story Project, I had no money whatsoever. We just started doing storytelling events, and for the first few events, we'd like put out a bucket for donations, and then like split that between the storytellers and the organizers. And it's grown a lot since then. It continues evolving, and when we started in 2013, a typical event was focused on like having fun, right? Challenging stereotypes, having a cultural event that like connected neighbors to one another and celebrated a neighborhood. And it's grown now so that like in 2013, I think we did great things, but it was usually like a one-time event. And now we usually do series where it's like takes more time, and we do a bunch of like storytelling workshops with community members that then lead up to an event with performances of stories and art. And so actually the first event where I put that model into practice was in Richmond Hill. Richmond Hill Love Letter, and Wendy Angula was one of our storytellers. And that was the first event where I too was a storyteller. So it was very, very special for me. And as the Five Boro Story Project keeps evolving, as I kept doing events, I guess I realized that it's very important to use the Five Boro Story Project platform to amplify the work that's being done by activists and community organizers. So since Five Boro Story Project events have this power to like create connections between people and to build solidarity, and those kind of connections are the most important element for any community organizing work to be a success. So I feel like it can really strengthen work that's being done to make our neighborhoods better places to live. We've been particularly focusing on how we can use storytelling to resist gentrification and displacement. We also, I feel like it's really important hearing stories about the past and imagining the future based on those stories. Because when we hear stories about the past, we realize things have not always been the way that they are now. And we see some alternatives to the way things are now. And we can think about what we want to preserve from the past and what we want to change. And it helps us imagine new alternatives. And of course, imagining alternatives is the first step towards making them a reality. So with the Five Boro Story Project, we're strengthening relationships, we're unleashing people's imaginations. And when we move forward with unleashed imaginations and strong relationships, we're better equipped to dream up a new world and to bring it into being. Woo! Woo! It's all starting in Queens. I'm really excited to be part of celebrating Queens Women Artists because I was born and raised in Queens, and Queens played a really big part in shaping who I am and the work that I'm doing today with the Five Boro Story Project. So I'm always happy to take the opportunity to celebrate my home borough. And being part of this event, I am also really excited to connect with other Queens artists, and I think this is a great way to bring people together and get to meet more people who are doing amazing things in our borough. And thank you so much, Joan, for inviting me to be part of it.